Hi, welcome to Rapid Fire for Tuesday, June 10th. I'm Ernesto Burden, publisher of Military and Aerospace Electronics, and I'm here with our editor-in-chief, John Keller. John, welcome.
Here we are once again.
Here we are. It's a Tuesday, and this is Rapid Fire. So let's dive right in. You have picked three stories this week that are the fulcrum upon which the week's news turns. And the first one is Navy considers 360-degree multispectral persistent surveillance for surface ship defense. And
Try to say that three times real fast.
I couldn't even say it once slow. So what's happening here with the multispectral persistent surveillance for surface ship defense?
Let's see if I can take a shot at it. Multispectral imaging is a pretty big deal right now in the military. It's related to hyperspectral imaging, but basically it tries to take an image and slice it up in terms of the different light spectra, with the idea that you would be able to, by taking apart the pieces of the image in different spectra, you can see things that you couldn't ordinarily see with just the naked eye or just with a visible image. An interesting thing here is the Navy is talking about 360-degree coverage around a Navy ship, and that's basically half of a very large ball. I think the intent is overall that they want to be able to counter what military commanders are expecting to be swarm tactics involving very fast, maneuverable missile boats out in the Persian Gulf. One of the worst things that could happen in a swarm type attack on Navy destroyer or cruiser or even an aircraft carrier operating in the Persian Gulf would be surprised, because these boats could be moving as fast as 60 miles an hour or faster. Very maneuverable, very hard to hit them with a machine gun, very hard to defend yourself, and they would be converging on Navy ships from all points on the compass. So it would be very taken by surprise and and be able to overwhelm defenses just with sheer numbers. Even an aircraft carrier, if you've got 100 boats coming at you, how are you going to defend against that? If they're launching missiles at you, some of them are going to get through. So it's a very serious situation. If you can have 360-degree multispectral persistent surveillance all around the ship, at least in theory, you would be able to reach out to longer ranges with finer grain type imaging. Multispectral will give you daylight imaging. It'll give you nighttime imaging. It'll also give you very sharp imaging in bad weather, in smoke, and fog. So the idea is you want to be able to reach out much farther in your surveillance and not get taken by surprise. Now, interesting thing there is I think the overall Navy initiative is not just involving this 360-degree surveillance. Around the same time, the Navy's talking about some of the first experimental deployments of laser weapons aboard ships. So I'm thinking if you can take this 360-degree multispectral sensor system, slave it to deck-mounted laser weapons, this type of a combination might give an isolated surface ship a fighting chance against these expected swarms of fast missile boats. It's the kind of asymmetric warfare that the Navy and all the military services are planning for, and they're trying to bring the latest technology to bear on the problem.
Boy, the image that conjures up in terms of what that would look like it feels like something out of a George Lucas, Steven Spielberg movie.
I think it'll probably look a lot better than that. I mean, the reality is going to be much better than the special effects.
No kidding.
Potentially, against pirates as well, not just swarms of, fast attack boats. But I believe that the swarm-type tactics in the Persian Gulf is the primary threat. that the Navy's considering when they're coming up with these new high-tech weapons.
Mm. So, second story, Aurora Flight Sciences joins Sikorsky in the next phase of a project to design a new tilt rotor. What will be new about this particular vehicle?
Well, it's not something that would be ready for deployment. It's more of a technology development program. Um, it's spearheading this project is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA. Um, the project is called the VTOL X-Plane Program. Essentially, they want to come up with some new core technologies that will help the defense industry come up with a next generation tilt rotor to replace the V-22 Osprey that's out there now. They want technology that's going to be that you want an aircraft that can take off like a helicopter, fly straight and level like a fixed wing aircraft. They want it to be able to fly as fast as 400 knots. That's about the speed of a small business jet today. Um, they also wanted to have very strong lift capability. So it's really the next generation tilt rotor. Now, what's happening is we're moving to a so-called Phase 1B uh, portion of this program. Now, right now, there are four contractors involved. There's Aurora Flight Sciences. They're in Manassas, Virginia. There's Sikorsky. They're down in Stratford, Connecticut. There's a couple other ones. There's a Karam Aircraft in Lake Forest, California, and Boeing also was involved. Um, the first part, Phase 1A, is kind of defining concepts. Phase 1B, that's where they're going to sharpen the pencils a little bit more, come up with some simulations, try to advance that technology. Um, so far, Sikorsky and Aurora have gotten the Phase 1B contracts. They're worth about $10 million apiece. DARPA says the other two contractors probably will get Phase 1B contracts too. The Boeing and Caron will probably get contracts sometime in the fall. Now, when they move to the second phase of this, ultimately they want to come up with a prototype aircraft, have a flight test around 2017, 2018, something like that. For the second and third phases, there's going to be a down select. There's only going to be one of those four contractors that survive. But ultimately, this program is supposed to come up with the core technologies that it's going to lead to the next generation tilt rotor aircraft. And this will be something that DARPA will be able to hand off either to the Air Force or Army, or a combination of both. So we might be able to have a viable fleet of replacement, fast-moving, heavy lift, vertical takeoff and vertical takeoff aircraft somewhere around 2020 timeframe, I guess.
So it's the speed and the payload size that really will make this the next generation.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be quite a bit more, quite a bit more than what the Osprey can do now. They're talking about a new generation that can go 400 knots. The Osprey, what we've got out there today, it can go about 275 knots. The new one should be able to go 400 knots. Um, the DARPA program, they want hover efficiency of 75%, cruise efficiency, lift to drag ratio of at least 10, useful load capacity of at least 40% of the vehicle's projected gross weight of about 10,000 to 12,000 pounds. So it's really going to be a quantum leap beyond what we have now.
Mm. So, last story. Army wants vehicle protection systems that detect incoming enemy fire and shoot back automatically. This sort of almost brings us back to the first story with the Navy's multispectral persistent surveillance potentially being slave to laser weapons. Now we have an Army vehicle protection system that will also detect incoming enemy fire and shoot back automatically.
Right. Well, one of the two are related, and that's kind of what got my attention about it. Now, with this, I think it would be somewhat of a more of a near-term project. The Army's reached out to industry to try to find companies that might be able to do this. Come up with a sensor system that you could slave to weapons on a vehicle, machine guns, cannon, what have you, and be able to detect the direction that incoming fire is coming from an enemy, machine guns, rifles, rocket-propelled grenades, you name it, and be able to tell what kind of ammunition is being fired, the direction, and be able to return fire all in probably about less than a second. So basically, this would put the world on notice that if you pull the trigger on a U.S. Army convoy, your chances of survival are pretty remote. So it's going to be very interesting. Although, of course, like with most technologies, there's going to be some political considerations involved. Rarely does the military want something that's actually going to deploy some sort of a deadly weapon without a person in the loop. So there would be some automation, much quickening, the sensor to shooter chain, as the military says. But I don't think they're going to want to have it completely automated, at least not initially, and not in every kind of scenario. So it'll be a very interesting kind of development.
Yeah, well, I would think that would be something that they would need to have incredibly bulletproof as a system, so that it's not mistaking anything that's coming in for deadly weapons fire.
No, you really don't want to have a kid throwing a rock at a military vehicle, and weapons deployed against them. I don't even want to think about that kind of thing. But the idea is that military vehicles, particularly convoys, are tremendously vulnerable to terrorists hiding with rocket-propelled grenades. The improvised explosive devices that are the so-called roadside bombs are a tremendous threat. And military vehicles these days are very vulnerable to a wide variety of threats. And I think the Army just wants to be able to beef that up and, again, put an enemy on notice that you can't take a shot at a U.S. Army vehicle without paying the price.
It'll be interesting to see how long it takes them to roll that out. Do you have any predictions?
The Army is just sending out requests to industry right now. My guess is that if the Army decides to pursue, there's no guarantees there, but if the Army decides to pursue it, I think they would be able to tap into some fairly mature technology. We're talking about potentially acoustic sensors. We're talking about imaging sensors. You're talking about digital signal processing and networking. It's not. I don't think it's a tremendous challenge. So I think that if the Army pursues it, it can happen fairly quickly. I would guess if the Army's serious about it, they might be able to get something out there in say 2017 to 2020 timeframe. We'll have to see.
Well, if you're a Vitronics expert or with a company that manages that, and you're interested in submitting your ideas, John has the contact info on his story on this in the website today, where you can email questions to the Army as to what they might need. And you can see this story and our other two stories that John talked about, as well as all the other things that he's posted this week on militaryaerospace.com. John, thank you very much.
Okay.
And everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you again here next week.